Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Melisha and Liz. So this is a birth mother and birth daughter combination, a rare event, and full of wisdom and love. I'm sure we're going to be today. So, hello, welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we've lost our we no longer can see the screen. I'm trying to figure out how to get back. I think I hit here.
Yeah.
Happening. Oh dear.
I can still see you.
Okay, well, maybe that's just as well that we can't see ourselves. All
So,
right.
That's fine. I don't have to look
listeners, we're doing this on,
there it is.
Zoom,
Okay.
Zoom
There
with
we go.
video. You're only seeing you're only seeing you're only listening to us, listeners. You
Okay.
can't see us, but these two ladies look like twins, or older, older sister and younger. They doppelgangers, as they say. So today we're going to be talking about healing, and Melisha actually had a bit of a tumble. So we're talking about kind of emotional and mental healing and spiritual healing, if there is such a thing. Not physical stuff, because she had a bit of a fall last year, which is why it's been a while getting on the show. So welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. The fall was on Bob Dylan's birthday.
Oh, right. Okay.
24.
her favorite musician.
Yeah, favorite musician. And who's your favorite musician, Liz?
Oh, probably Bob Marley.
Bob Marley. Okay. How do policemen like their? No, how does Bob Marley like his donuts?
I don't know.
With jamming.
I like that. Good joke.
I only can remember really cheesy short jokes. At the age of 56, I often get jokes wrong, like I did got that one. And if they're long story, people just lose interest and turn its own off. So we're going to be talking about healing. So, Melisha, could we start with you? What does healing mean to you?
Oh boy, what does healing mean to me? Well, if you're healing from a physical wound, it means getting the right medications and taking the proper rest so that your wounds heal. Unfortunately, when it's emotional healing, sometimes we don't have medications that really take care of that. And it's a combination of time, and maybe in the case of, I would say, birth mothers, the real healing only takes place once they've found out what happened to their child. Otherwise,
yeah, when you get your questions answered, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people, my philosophy was not always that. As you may recall, I helped thousands of adoptees in the state of Illinois reconnect. I had a not-for-profit that reconnected families, and I helped thousands of people. But for most birth mothers, the number one question was never, am I going to meet my child? It was, what happened to my child? Are they okay? Do they want to meet? And answering those questions was always a very healing experience.
Yeah. Because the questions lay heavy on you, I guess.
Yes, and the thing is, when I first began searching, which was back in 1990, actually I started in 1992, was discouraged by the cost of searching and by the unavailability of searching for birth parents, and then didn't really start my search until 1996. But it was against the law in the state of Illinois for birth mothers to search back then through the state. The adoption agency that I went to for assistance kept saying, oh, this is so unusual that a birth mother would be searching. Oh, we know, like, what is wrong with you, lady, that you're actually concerned about your child? That's not the way you're supposed to react. And so that was a quarter of a century ago, and a lot has changed in that quarter of a century. But
yeah, and neither of you look above 21. That was just another one of my jokes.
I'm your age.
Thanks.
No,
Yeah, I'll
this-
signpost.
wow.
I'll signpost that. Yeah, when I got my adoption file, I could tell, which had loads of letters back and forth between my birth mother and the adoption agency and my parents. I could really feel that power imbalance between my birth mother Pat and the agency, and yeah, it wasn't a nice thing even to feel on her behalf. So what it was like for her, yeah, and what it was like.
A searching back in 1996, a searching birth mother was made to feel like she was weird. She didn't have the right to be doing this. She was, going to interrupt her child's life, the child being in her late 20s at the time of the search. Agencies did everything they could to discourage birth parents from doing what their hearts, for the most part, told them to do, because that disrupted their whole relationship with the adoptive parents, which was one of client provider.
Yeah.
And the birth mothers were the commodity, or creating the commodity.
Yeah.
But they were part
Horrible.
of that.
Horrible.
They really wanted them out of the picture.
Yeah. So Liz, what does healing mean for you?
I think, and vice versa with what Melisha said, it was a big healing thing for me when she found me, because I was wondering for 28 years, where did I come from? Whose nose do I have? So I got a huge package from her with all my answers, all my questions answered. And I felt so healed, because now I know that I wasn't, just cast aside. So
Yeah.
that's a good healing experience for me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
What about you?
Well-
Did you feel healed?
Well, my most healing moment was actually reading a letter from my birth mum.
Oh,
But the letter wasn't to me. The letter was to us. The letter was to a social worker. The letter was to the social worker, and I subsequently found out that my birth mother had died.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the letter really, the letter was written by Pat to Mrs. Bellis, who was the social worker, and it was expressing her gratitude to the social worker for helping with my transition, with my placement, and it was also asking her if she would ask my adoptive parents if they would accept a teddy bear from her. So
Yes.
yeah. And yeah, so this Pat, my birth mother's pouring her heart out, and I felt in that letter, I felt her love for me, and I felt actually connected with her. So when I said at the top of the conversation about spiritual healing, I felt at one with her, and I felt. As the tears kind of flooded down my face, they washed away about, I don't know, 20, 40 seconds of anger and fear towards my birth mother. But I'd had some couple of scary moments, but they were kind of washed away. Reading this letter, feeling Pat's desperation, feeling Pat's love for me, and me seeing that this teddy bear was not as I'd seen it in a fit of pique and anger, a consolation prize. It kind of encapsulated her love for me. And so I actually I felt for her, and I felt a connection with her, despite the fact that she died 15 years before I read that letter, and she'd written that letter 48 years before I wrote it. Before I'd read it. So it was a really deep, it was a breakdown to breakthrough moment. Yeah, it was huge.
I'm glad she wrote that letter.
Me too. Me too. Yeah. So, other than the,
I would just add one thing. One of the first changes I made to the laws in Illinois was allowing birth parents through the state registry to leave letters for their children. And it is the provision that the agencies fought the hardest. Like, they didn't want birth mothers to be able to send that communication to their children without someone inspecting it, taking out what they didn't like. Do you know what I mean? They wanted control over that, the agencies. So I thought that was very telling, because it was such a simple thing, letters and pictures to be left for the adoptee, or vice versa.
The medical information.
Is it just to make their life easier? Are they afraid? Are they afraid they're going to get it in the neck? Were they afraid they're going to get it?
Afraid of the reactions of their clients, the adoptive parents. The adoptive parents aren't going to like this. And in fact, the agencies were encouraging people to go through them for contact, but of course they weren't really doing the searches that people were paying them to do, I soon discovered. But at the same time, they would not allow them to exchange letters. They would say, we'll call on your behalf and see what they have to say.
Oh, God.
They did not want that interaction without their control.
So obviously the reunion has been a huge healing moment, right? And moments.
And I think it is for all adoptees and birth parents. I think that they all experience a certain degree of healing, maybe not as much as the three of us.
So talk us through the change of feelings, and talk us, because it's got to be whenever I see it on telly, it's emotional. It's a highly charged emotional moment. So what went on?
What was the reunion like?
Well, I went from in my life feeling a lot of anger, not knowing where I came from, and then finally meeting her and having all my questions answered. I felt wonderful and happy. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the actual moment?
Well, when I first got the package from her, it said Chicago, and I knew I was from Chicago. So my first reaction was, well, it's about time.
You knew the surname Mitchell.
Yeah, my mom had seen something upside. When I say mom, I mean my adopted. I call Melisha.
Yeah. Everyone calls me Melisha.
Yeah, even her other kids call her Melisha.
Do some people say that it's awkward being called Melisha and it should just be Melissa like everybody else? Does the H throw people out?
Well, it was always kind of a problem. And then when I became involved in adoption, it gave me kind of a line. It's like, yeah, my name is Melisha, like the army, but spelled differently.
All right. Okay.
In fact, I will share with you a very funny two funny anecdotes we have at the time. One of the first senators I met in Illinois, we got our first bill through the House, and now we're going to the Senate. And I was told that, the top of my list should be a young senator named Barrack Obama, whom I went to see. And I handed him my card, and he looks at it, he said, Michelle, my wife's name is Michelle. And I'm like, no, it's not Michelle, it's Melisha, like the army. And then I'm like, but spelled differently. And he's like, oh, like the army, huh? So what kind of war are you waging, Melisha? And I said, I'm here from the adoption trenches, I think. Yeah. Now, the best part of this story is I didn't see Barack Obama, who voted for our bill, for 4 years after that. 4 years later, I had another piece of legislation. It's late one night, there's nobody in their Senate office, but oh yeah, there's a light at the end of the hall. Somebody's working. It was Barack Obama.
Yeah.
And I tap on his door and he says, come in. And I push the door open and he goes, Melisha? And I'm like, Senator Obama, how did you do that? The last time I saw you was 30 pounds, 4 hair colors, and 4 years ago. And he's like, well, Melisha, you have a very memorable face.
Yeah.
My Barack Obama story.
Wow. Wow.
But I used the militia line,
Yeah.
the army just felt it a lot.
He's a great statesman. He's a great statesman.
Great state, that story illustrates what a great politician he was. To remember somebody's face 4 years, later, and the person just walks into his office, Melisha, who can do that?
Yeah.
Obama.
Yeah. So healing then, what did you in the work that you did, Melisha?
Yes.
What did you learn about what helps birth mothers and adoptees heal?
Well, birth mothers in particular need a lot of reassuring. They all came to searches with a lot of guilt. I don't have the right to do this. I'm doing something wrong. So they certainly needed a lot of reassuring to even begin the journey, if you will. Adoptees tended to be fed a lot of false information about their birth parents. And they really had a different journey to make from these beliefs that they'd grown up with. Oh, your birth mother, wanted no part of you. She just, threw you away and we came there to rescue you. That's, kind of a typical story. And unfortunately, very prevalent. And so I think, and not only that, but agencies were giving out false information about birth mothers to pretty up the story. I remember one girl who was, in her background information was listed as a farm girl from Iowa. She had never been to Iowa and she'd never been on a farm. And she had no idea why she had been described this way, except that the people who adopted her daughter were farmers. So they were providing to them, some idea that, oh, they had a lot in common with this child rather than providing the actual information. So I think adoptees have to wade through a lot of misinformation and false ideas that are given to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes subtly, sometimes not so subtly.
Yeah. And what impact did the truth have? What impact does the truth have when these beliefs are shown to be, when these purported facts are seen to be lies?
Well, it's very shocking for a lot of adoptees. There's someone in politics here in Illinois who's actually on trial right now for corruption. I will not give his name, but his son came to me for an adoption search. And based on the information I gave to me, his reaction was, and at the time, this man was quite well respected in political circles in the state of Illinois. He certainly is no longer, but he was then. And he's like, are you telling me my father lied to me? And I'm like, well, I don't want to tell you your father lied to you. He may have misrepresented the truth. But I don't think he would want to intentionally lie. But in fact, the truth was that very often adoptive parents outright lied to their children. I can't get information. I have no information when they had the birth mother's name sitting in a safe somewhere. And even I was going to say, even in the case of Lizz, who I think her adoptive parents weren't too negative about her birth mother, but
no, they would say, I bet she's busy with another family now.
Right. No, but there was one time when she said something, like, I can't recall what it was anymore because it was so long ago, but little subtle things, like, well, maybe she's into drugs. Are you sure you want to find that person? Why would they make such an assumption? It's only to keep these two groups apart, birth parents
Yeah.
and adoptees.
Yeah. It strikes me as quite a control freakery, a lot of control freakery going on, a lot of jealous guarding.
Yes.
And I'm wondering how much is the financial imperative, how much is the reputation of the agency, because I don't know whether you know, but adoption in the UK is quite different.
Yeah, I do know. I have a daughter who lives in the UK, so I'm kind of aware of adoption laws, but continue what you were saying.
Yeah. So in the UK, for a domestic adoption, the agency, and there's not very many of them, there's like a couple of thousand a year, I think, at the moment, something like that. Whereas it used to be a lot higher. But the adoption, I wasn't adopted through an adoption agency. It was called an adoption council, and
councils are everything.
Yeah, but they are paid. They're paid by the state. The paper that the adoptive parents do not pay. Now, I'm sure that they're paid per adoption, so they have it in their remit to make sure that that the adoptions happen, but they don't have quite that. It's not quite as transactional. It strikes me. It's not quite as transactional because the money's, perhaps the agency the council can be a little more even-handed, shall we say, less commercial. And there's lots, obviously. So a lot has changed since I was adopted back in 67, with the contact thing, and that's all. And we're not going in for quite as open, I don't think, adoption as you guys are in the States. But nevertheless, a lot
that came from birth mothers. That openness was demanded by birth mothers. Didn't come from the adoptive parents, and it certainly didn't come from the agencies. It came from the birth mothers who knew their commodity was at a premium, because after Roe v. Wade, of course, now we have lost Roe v. Wade in the United States, but after Roe v. Wade, women seeking a family for a child they could not care for became very rare. And they decided they were going to negotiate. Okay, well, I want somebody who's going to send me pictures and letters every month. That you? If it wasn't that particular adoptive parent, they'd move on. Whereas there was no contact back in the 60s between birth parents and adoptive parents. But that came from birth mothers, not the agency.
And it's a change, a change in the power dynamic.
Right, except that the power dynamic did remain with the adoptive parents.
Yes.
And unfortunately, many times the adoptive parents would say, but of course, we'll have visits every week or every day if you want to. And how often do you want? And then as soon as that adoption was finalized, within 6 months, they would break all those promises because they were all verbal promises. They weren't in the law, they weren't in the documents they signed. And a verbal promise has a 6-month shelf life in the United States, or at least in the state of Illinois. I know that for a fact. So after 6 months, they were no longer obligated. And then they would just, move, not show any sign of life. And finally, the birth parent would not get what they had asked for. So they maintain that control. And the only time they lost that control is when we changed the adoption laws here. Then we're saying you can tell whatever you want, but when that child is 21, they get their information. So maybe think about which lies you're going to tell.
Yeah. How do you feel, Liz, when you hear all this stuff? coming out of from you? All this, the power dynamic stuff and the changes and the
I'd
attitude
love
that
for it. I think it should be open. You know, I had so much anger inside of me, not knowing where I came from. I'm like, I didn't pick this for my life. Nobody talked to me if I want to be adopted or not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And did you have adopted siblings as well, or were you?
yeah, one brother, he was 5 years older.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he had been adopted from New York.
Right. Okay. And has he reunited with his birth family?
No, he isn't.
He's not interested, or
Yeah, I don't think he really wants to look, or he's not interested. He's got kids of his own and he's happy with his family. I don't think he wants to rock the boat.
no.
Male adoptees search far, far less often than female adoptees. And most of the male adoptees who came to me for help came through their girlfriend or their wife, or maybe their adoptive mother, but they rarely came on their own. There was somebody else pushing them from behind.
Why do you think that was? Why do you think that was, Melisha?
I don't know. I think that there's a weird thing going on for male adoptees where their relationship with their birth mother becomes, with their adoptive mother, is kind of sacred, and they don't want to hurt her feelings by finding the birth mother. I'm not really sure what but I've heard that excuse. My adoptive mother's still alive. I can't hurt her feelings.
Yeah, I had a friend, he said, you know, I would never search for my birth mother. I would never do that to my mother.
Yeah.
And then he ended up registering and getting a match and knows her now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very happy.
Yeah. I think that, you know, female adoptees, first of all, they're women. They understand the situation a little bit better than men to begin with. And they have a different kind of relationship with their adoptive mothers.
Yeah.
Where it may not be this, you know, adoring Madonna on a pedestal kind of relationship.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that's struck me is that you know, the maternal instinct for many women is strong. You know, like and so when they have, especially when that often happens when they have their own children, then there's a mismatch. They're thinking, well, how could this be? You know, they've got more.
Well, very often.
Yeah, they've got more empathy.
Women, adoptees are fed the line, you know, your birth mother didn't want you, but we were there to take over and take care of you. And then they grow up and they have children of their own, and they're like, this is not possible. There is no way this woman gave birth to me and just said, I want to be done with it. That I have been fed a lie. That cannot be the truth. And that will spur many women, through the fact that they have given birth and they realize they've been fed a lot of baloney on this topic, that they decide to search. They're like, it just can't, it can't be that she won't want to know what happened to me.
Yeah.
It just cannot be.
Yeah.
And in fact, it is very rare, despite, you know, all that we would like people to believe about birth mothers, that they're callous and they gave away their children. In my experience, 90% want contact with their children.
So how long have you guys been in reunion, as they say?
27 years.
27.
28 years.
96, be 28 years this April.
Wow.
And I was living in New York when she found me. I moved here after I broke up with a boyfriend that I was living with in California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So what have you learned about navigating that relationship in all those 27 years?
What have we learned? That I have a doppelganger. It's weird. A lot of things that we didn't grow up together. I didn't grow up with her, but we have a lot of the same mannerisms, a lot of the same phrases we'll use. You know, somebody will say something, we'll say the same thing right back to them.
Like like stereo sound.
Oh, similar laughs, and we never even. I didn't learn my laugh from her. I was born with the laugh, I guess.
I think certainly the reunion experience, you start to see all the things that are not, what is it? Is it
Inherent.
inherited? Well, no,
Yeah.
no, that, you know, is it biology versus what is, how does
Nature versus nurture.
Yeah, nature versus nurture. That nature is like 90% of who somebody is.
Yeah, it really is.
And you know, the remaining 10%, okay, you may have, there may be an influence from nurture, but it's nature's doing a lot more than we realized.
Yeah.
The laugh, you know, the way you might hold your hand. I mean, just it's insane.
Yeah.
And not just us, but many adoptees.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I guess I'm looking for because not everything, not all reunions last 27 years, right?
no. Oh, I see. And your last question.
Yeah.
Well,
So I'm saying what you've learned.
We have had our ups and downs over the last 27 years.
Well, let's not talk about the downs. That's upsetting.
No, but so I'm going to take your question. How do you get through the downs? Because there will be, in all relationships, in all family relationships, ups and downs. There's never smooth sailing for forever. And I think that in the times when things were a little bit difficult, certainly in the early years when we sort of had to get used to this connection and to develop the amount of trust that we needed, you have to just say, we are connected and this will work itself out, and not just slam the door. I think that's true of all relationships. Never slam the door. Make sure it's always ajar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's, and it works for all relationships. I just
Yeah.
Well, we haven't had a down for years, over 10 years.
no, it was really kind of in the beginning, and there were extenuating circumstances, I'd say.
But you
We're
were
good
sticking, you stuck with it.
now.
Yeah, she stuck by me.
Yeah. Well, after all that,
Yeah.
you're gonna keep going, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
of course we can.
Yeah. There's no silver bullet. It's just keep going.
Right. No, there's no, I think there's no silver bullet, but you'll know when the person is ready to reconnect if they've had an issue, like, you know, particularly in, you see it in adoption reunions, things will be going fine, and then there'll be a spat of some sort over something, and then the whole thing blows up. Well, in regular relationships, that's not what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
You kind of let the dust settle, and you know, it's like Christmas Day, my oldest son was just in a terrible mood. Terrible mood. Walked in the house. He's like, "Why are you looking at me like that? You know I'm in a bad mood." No, we did not. And he just marched off and marched up the stairs. 15 minutes later, he came back down, and it was like nothing had happened. Well, that's how relationships are. You just let the person calm down. You know?
Yeah. And how's your? I mean, do you call them half siblings? I mean, half brothers? What?
Yeah, I don't
them?
like to call them half because they feel like full brothers and sisters. But I've got one sister and 3 brothers.
Yeah. So share, has that followed the same sort of trajectory, like tricky at the start and then some ups and downs and smoother in the long term, or how's that been?
It's been mostly smoothly with the kids, I think, because they understand me because we're related. I never had people around me that could understand me. And I haven't really had any downs with them. I mean, when I was down with Melisha, I really wasn't talking to them either, but I never really got in a big fight or anything with any of them. I really love them a lot.
Yeah.
We feel like full brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
I think that she has her relationships with her siblings are pretty close to what they would have been had she grown up with them. Yeah, there's not that space in that relationship because they didn't grow up together.
Yeah.
They, in fact, are.
And now we've known each other longer than we've been alive, than
Yeah.
Well,
That
longer
didn't
than
know.
we didn't know each
Yeah.
other. Yeah.
that's what
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So, what the questions? What would you like to share, either of you, that I've not asked you about? Because we've covered quite a lot of ground. I'm just thinking, what is it that you'd like? What is there anything that you'd like to share that I've not asked
Well,
you?
I think Melisha's like my best friend. She does everything for me. She helps me. She just helped me with my car. And I would like to encourage people to find their roots and get back to them. Get a reunion going. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And Melisha, what would you like to say? What would you like to share, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, the same message. I think, even today, there are many birth mothers who feel they don't have the right to know what happened to their child. They signed away their rights, and all you did is sign away property rights, but you didn't sign away emotional rights.
Yeah.
And you have every right to follow your emotions and at least find out what happened to your child. I mean, I think, a lot of birth mothers, they won't want any part of me, but yeah, but you're going to get so much out of that reunion, just knowing they're okay. If they don't need you, well, that's a good feeling too. They're fine. They don't need me. Great. But it all brings healing. All, whatever's the outcome might be, it will bring you healing.
Because it'll be the end of the answers to the questions.
Hmm.
Well, thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and
I'm glad you interviewed us.
it's been great.
Gonna listen.
And thank you, listeners, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Simon. Bye.